What's the realest expression of grief in movies or TV that you have ever seen? Brian Song. Brian Piccolo, James Caan and Gale Sayers. Billy D. Williams are teammates on the mid-1960s Chicago Bears. Brian gets diagnosed with cancer. True story. Very sad. The month before Piccolo's death, Gale Sayers accepted the George S. Hollis Award for Most Courageous Player and told the crowd they had selected the wrong person for the award. He said, "I love Brian Piccolo, and I'd like all of you to love him, too. Tonight, when you hit your knees to pray, please ask God to love him, too." MASH, when radar told everyone in the OR that Lieutenant Colonel Henry Blake was killed in a plane crash. Actually, the script was kept secret to most of the cast, so when it was filmed it really was a shock. Actually, my understanding is that the scene that aired was a retake, but the emotions of everyone was still raw. They really did expect McLean Stevenson simply moved along from the show. No one expected him and his character to be killed. For me, one of the best was Minnie Driver in Good Will Hunting. When Will says he doesn't love her and he walks out and her face just crumples. The pain of the grief is a physical feeling, and you see her grab for her stomach as she almost doubles over in agony. She can't breathe, she can't talk, she can only gasp and sob. That's what it feels like being hurt by the one you love the most in the world. Maybe not the best, but it was a good one. How I Met Your Mother, episode Bad News. There's even a hidden Easter egg countdown in the episode. Apparently it was one of those hidden endings as well, so the main character didn't know exactly what was coming in the script. His reaction was the absolute shock you feel when getting unexpected tragic news. In the book The Stand, one of the main characters has to bury her father. And after she finishes, she goes into the kitchen and there's this pie, this strawberry pie that he had made before he got sick. And she sits down and eats the whole thing. I don't know why, but something about that scene has always stuck with me. The father of the murdered girl in Wind River has a great scene right at the end of the movie. That scene with him and Jeremy Renner's character is beautifully done. It's one of the most realistic scenes because it's not overdone or melodramatic. It's quiet and private and feels very natural and real. Maybe it was because I saw the movie at exactly the most impressionable age, but Vada's grief and my girl, especially at the funeral, hit me really hard. When I saw it, I forget she's was fictional character. I felt like I was watching something that should be private. Frances Conroy Ruth in the pilot of 6 Feet Under. Both when she gets a phone call on Christmas, and particularly when she loses it at the burial and starts throwing dirt on the coffin moaning. So visceral. Her performance throughout the show is just phenomenal. Abby Cornish has a grieving scene in Bright Star that has to be seen to be believed. Also, Tilda Swinton's whole performance in We Need to Talk About Kevin is probably the most dead on realistic portrayal of the day-to-day of grief. The Hereditary mother screaming scene. I'd give It's grief, I guess so, but it seems more visceral than just grief, like nervous is too horrified what grief is to that scene. I can't think of the word for primal grief. In SLC Punk, when Matt Lillard's character finds his friend dead the next morning. That seemed pretty real and raw to me. Confusion, denial, anger, despair, sadness. All in the span of 10 minutes or so. But random and slept on, but I recently did my annual rewatch of The Haunting of Hill House, and the acting in that is just next level. Emo. Grief is portrayed many ways in V realistically emo. Carol's reaction in The Quarterback. I can never imagine what a parent goes through when they lose a child, and I hope I never have to. It just seems so real how she broke down. Toni Collette in Hereditary. She spanned all of the stages. Especially love her yelling at her son from across the dinner table. She is one of the best actors of current times. No one can break down more realistically than Emma Thompson. I've seen her in at least 2 movies where she seems absolutely crushed, and it's heartbreaking. Not necessarily grief, but Matthew Broderick in Glory when he looks out to the sea knowing his time was coming to an end soon. Very underrated scene. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the body. The entire episode will tear you apart. It is one of the most raw visuals of death grief I have ever seen. Not a movie or show, but the original Borderlands 2 Tiny Tina DLC surprisingly hits hard and resonates truer than most when it drops. House of Sand and Fog. Catch and release. People knock it, but this movie really hits many aspects of grief and many kinds of grief. Once War Warriors, a mother comes home to find her daughter had hung herself, then later takes her to be given a Maori burial. When Forrest is at Jenny's grave telling her how proud she'd be of their son and he just starts crying. Breaks me every time. The scene in Mare of Easttown when Juliana Nicholson's character collapses from grief in front of Kate Winslet's character. The award for most surprisingly real expression of grief through song in an animated film goes to Kristen Bell in Frozen 2. Adam Sandler's parking lot scene in the movie Click has always really stuck with me because of how real the emotions felt. This one is a little unconventional, but Rocket's reaction to Lila's death in Guardians of the Galaxy 3 hit me hard. I'm not the biggest Ricky Gervais fan, but Afterlife is a whole show about grief and you should watch it. Julie Christie fainting after she speaks with the clairvoyant about her daughter in Don't Look Now. A great example of pervasive sorrows in Todd Field's impressive In the Bedroom. Claire Danes having a breakdown and crying in Homeland. Her cry face feels very real. The funeral of Gareth in Four Weddings and a Funeral. The eulogy is shattering. Leo in Killers of the Flower Moon. It's just 1 or 2 seconds. But it's enough. I'm not super into hero stuff, but WandaVision was great exploration of grief. Steel Magnolias when Julia Roberts dies, and Sally Fields is in total grief. Forrest Gump for his mother, Bubba and Ginny. I lose my shit every time. My Life Michael Keaton. Circus scene backyard. Watch Lone Men. And the correct answer is Jessica Chastain in The Tree of Life. Hawkeye TV. From Clint's survival guilt to Yelena's anger. Casey Affleck in Manchester by the Sea. A Destroyed Man. Sally Field in Steel Magnolias after her daughter passes. Amos Diggory in Goblet of Fire when he sees his dead son. Rocket Raccoon screaming after Lola dies in front of him.